Welcome, everybody. This is the 13th of May edition of Life Training, right? It's not even really sales training, Leandro. It's more life training, more mindset training. And I got to tell you that this chapter that we're covering today, which is the fourth principle, right? So we're almost halfway through the book, Leandro. Fourth principle, do something. And I got to tell you, not only have I been validated in this, but I know a lot of people who think this way. I know I used to think the way he's talking about, and I know I think the other way now, the way he's talking about. So it was a fantastic chapter. There is I have more notes than we have minutes, right? So today, it's like usually I come in and like, hey, man, we can get out of here in a half hour probably. We're an hour and 10. Today, I know we're going to be an hour, and watch, we'll be like 49. Just the way it goes. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm hoping some other people. Hey, Val, how are you? Glenn Brown, how you doing? Area code 925. How are you doing today? I'm hoping.
Hello there.
Who is it?
That's Beatrice.
Beatrice. Oh,
yes.
that 925 area code so much more valuable to me. No offense to anyone else who ever watches this. I'm glad to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. GB, you doing all right? You not wearing your makeup today? No camera? Oh, and never mind. See, the filter kicked in, Leandro. I'm getting good in my old age at filtering myself. All right, here we go. So, Leandro, I think typically I have more. I'm not upset. I don't want anybody mishear my heart here, but typically there's a lot of faces I can look at here and kind of get the energy based on responses. There's not many going on. That's okay, guys. This isn't a solicitation for you to change your activities right now, but I'm probably going to be talking a lot to you today, Leandro. I like looking at faces as you guys. Oh, there's Dana Boyd. Never mind, Leandro. Okay. I'm going to be looking at Dana Boyd. Hey, sweetie. I almost don't know where to start with this chapter. It was like the last chapter to me, and listen, you guys could be reading it and think something different, but the last chapter for me was a longer chapter that really explained fewer principles. I think this chapter is kind of the opposite. The first couple pages, I don't have a ton of notes, but then every page after that, Leandro, I'm just like, I'm looking for room to write. And the reason is, I think, is because to me, first of all, it's like the last chapter, it's somewhat validating for me personally. Do something, that's me. Like the easy example is, I worked for a guy before I Stacy and I started this business, and I was up in his attic one day, Leandro, and this guy's very successful. And Steve, the respect, and I love this guy. He's huge in my life. And I went up in his attic one day and I saw all this workout, like literally like jackets and pants, and come to find out his brother's got some doctorate in physical therapy or kinesiology, whatever. So they wanted to start like a workout program. They were ahead of their time, online based. Steve was way ahead of his time. And I asked, I said, well, why is all that stuff up there? And he said, it didn't work. And I said, well, how much did that cost you? And he said, probably 110, 115,000 that he lost trying that venture. And then I learned later that they tried an intranet system for kids. This is going way back. So they were way ahead of their time. And they almost every school board in Florida approved this software. And it basically was an internet environment for kids that was totally secure. They couldn't get hit with the stuff they get hit with, right? And the only school board that did not sign off was the only one that they needed to, because their business was residenced in Pinellas County. Pinellas County didn't do it. I asked him, I said, how much did you lose on that one? He said, $500,000. So it caused me to understand. It was just an affirmation of something that I already understood. Was probably a better way to say it, that successful people, entrepreneurs, people that are trying to be the best that they can be or get out of life what they want to get out of, know that failing sometimes is part of it, and don't fear that. And so when I read this principle, do something, although I haven't had ventures, and I'm not better than Steve, I'm just not as big as Steve. I haven't had ventures that have lost that much money. But Leandro, of a few things that we've done here and tried, and they didn't work. And you keep moving on and you keep trying, right? And so I'm validated in that respect. But then I also look at this And I don't mean this in a condescending way, because I certainly, before, 20 years ago, before I started into it, intentionally learning how to think better about life, and developing myself, I thought like this. Like, I can totally relate to some of this stuff. I mean, almost all of it in my past. So having said all that, without further ado, and again, I like it better, for me, not sometimes maybe I read a chapter and I could change and do the notes. But I really like kind of working through this. And I'll spare you all the reasons why, but just know I'm kind of doing the same format as we did last week. So if anytime you want to jump in, interrupt me, say something, please do. I've told you guys a long time ago, years ago, I used to love to hear myself speak. When I was first starting in public speaking, Leandro, I was like, man, I just want to get up there and do it. And now it's more about what's heard and what message is received. And it doesn't need to be the message that I intend, as long as there's an earnest message, right? Because it could be beyond me. That's true. Does that make sense? Okay. So in this chapter, he starts with, it's not hypothetical. He paints it as a real world occurrence. And the young lady's name is Gretchen. And Gretchen's got a beef with her sister. And in Gretchen's mind, although it doesn't go into great detail, in Gretchen's mind, the sister is completely responsible for this action, for her being aggrieved, right? For her being hurt, for her being whatever. And I was telling Leandro, and so let me rein my ADD in. He's helping her work through this, and he's getting irritated because she keeps talking like her sister has to make an action first because they're the cause. They're the one at fault. And through working that out, he lets her know that life is not a courtroom. And it reflected back. I actually wrote it right here on page 97. It's not about fault. It's about responsibility. And my dad taught me that when I was a kid. I don't even know how old I was, but I'm talking young teens. He said, when you start seeing things without blame or fault, but whatever happened, whatever resulted from that, there's a responsibility that we have to deal with that in the way that we have to deal with it. And so I just have some underlinings as I work through this. Sometimes it might seem abstract. I don't think it will. This one here is not abstract, very poignant. And in a book, there's a word that says that the rain falls on the just and the unjust. And so I thought of that when I read this. It said, I didn't ask who caused it. That only matters to a judge and a court if you decide to sue someone. This is what I underlined. If it rains, you did not cause that either. But is it your head that gets soaked if you don't come in? If you don't come in out of the rain or open an umbrella. So in a thunderstorm, are you going to just stand there and get wet, be miserable, and say, God caused this, so it's his problem? He should make the first move. That's how obvious it seems to me. We talked about it the last couple of weeks, Leandro, right? We're talking about bitterness and forgiveness and living a life of thankfulness and not living a life thinking of how you were aggrieved or how you were diminished. I have a saying that I've shared with you guys a lot, that it's never a setback. And I got it from Joel Osteen, so I can't take credit for it, but it's never a setback. It's always a setup. And it has very little to do. In fact, if anything, the circumstance itself, what it has to do is our response to that circumstance. And that's what this chapter is all about. It's how do we respond to things? And we're going to get into some things. This is one of those chapters where you all, for those of you who know me and end up watching this, you will have heard, I literally wrote, this is one of those where I wrote my euphemism that is the same thing. So deja vu people ask themselves the question, what can I do to make this situation better? He talks, and Leandro spoke, and I spoke a little bit before we started here today, and he talks about proactivity. That's definitely a big part of this chapter, and not needing to be reactive. And we'll get further into it because I could put the cart before the horse right now, Leandro. Like, it'd be easy to do. It'd actually be easier to do that than be patient and let it unfold as it's supposed to. Any comments, errors, omissions, additions, cares, concerns before we get going? Or I should say, keep going.
Everyone is very much in tune.
All right, let's keep rolling. All right. Deja vu people have a certain quality. In addition to listening to their heart's desires, getting rid of the negative. So this is the review right here. This is a review. Deja vu people have a certain quality. In addition to listening to their heart's desire, they get rid of the negative, right? Pull the tooth, thinking of how the present will affect the future, playing the movie. Remember, Leandro? They do something else. They tend to call on themselves as the first source to correct difficult situations. And I want us all to at least take a moment and think, how many times are we looking for something outside of our control to be maybe the first step to solving that? Like in Gretchen's case, he paints a great, I don't think it's hypothetical. I think it's like a real world example of how, and I can empathize with Gretchen, right? And like, they hurt me, they did this. How could I this? And I'll share the story that I did about Hans. You remember Hans, the talented young therapist? Literally, it's just a regurgitation of the same thing said differently. But I think we need that kind of, in fact, I know we do based on the human experience. We need that repetitiveness. We need that consistency of messaging to understand it. And listen, the way Dr. Cloud writes is beautiful to me. I think he does probably the best job of articulating some of the principles that I've tried to articulate, Leandro, over the months and years. And, you know, you just kind of come to a stumbling like, I know it, but I can't say it. And he just does it so well. It doesn't matter whether they think they are to blame or not. Even if someone else is at fault, they will ask themselves, what can I do to make things better? Basically, what can I control? I talked about it last week. Draw the T-sheet. Can I control somebody's emotions? Can I control the way they respond to something? And think about the normal practical thing. Has anybody ever said, hey, if you promise not to get mad, I'm gonna tell you something? It's like you're trying to manage the result of something that we know we need to do. And that in and of itself is broken thinking. And I'm not saying I don't have that sometimes. Like I do, like, oh my God, I don't really want to say this. Who knows what's going to happen? But over time, when you learn that the heartache, the failure, the stumbles, the heavy winds, the crazy circumstances, those are the times that we grow. So if it coincides with the rotten tooth, right? Like I know I need to pull it, but I'm scared of the pain. I'm scared of what I got to go through, but we have to go through that so that we don't have rot in our mouth, right? We got to pull the tooth. So it kind of, as we're going through it, I'm going to hope to kind of button things together a little bit, because to me, it all is synergistic, Leandro. It's totally synergistic. Blame does not matter. Responsibility does. That's where I kind of thought of my dad and wrote it down. It was right at the bottom of 98. And then it also coincides with something we've already talked about. It's like, do the hard stuff first. Go mend the relationship. Take dominion. Embrace the suck. Get the negative out of your life, right, Leandro? It's like, I know it's easy to say. It preaches well. It's harder to enact, but that doesn't make it less true. And I don't like it when people do well, that's hard. It's easy to say. Who cares? It does. If it makes it less true, we can talk about that. But just because it's easy to say, it doesn't really have relevance. Right now, there's a problem. How do we solve it? It's not through looking for someone else to make the difference. Yes, do I pray all the time that God put in my path people that will help me become the better me? Absolutely. I mean, the book we did before, How to Win Friends and Influence People, we need people to get where we want to go. That's how God operates, is through people. Are you driving your life or just along for the ride? Beatrice, I thought of you, because what's the number one principle in energy bus? You got to be the driver of your bus, right? You got to be the driver of your bus. I mean, it's almost like it's providential. Like we're talking about the energy bus, and he says, you got to be driving your life. And we do. And when we give dominion to someone else, and I've talked about this so many times, like, oh, they made me. Man, the minute that we become a victim in our mind is the minute that all problem-solving mechanisms in our brain shut down and life preservation mechanisms kick in. So now, just from a fight or flight standpoint, just from a basic biological standpoint, the minute we lose hope and we think we don't have the answer and we're not the driver of our bus is the minute our whole body, everything turns into a defense mechanism. How do I survive? You can't, nobody goes forward recoiling and blocking. And I think that's, man, I got chills all over. It's like, that's what this is about. It's about taking dominion and not letting the narrative of the day, the media, our neighbors, not nerding up, right? Nerd up and grabbing and saying, I'm in control. I don't care if I lose 120 grand. I don't care if I lose 500 grand. I feel like this is part of my experience. And I got to tell you, the guy that I'm talking about that lost all that money is one of the most successful people I know. And I had the pleasure of working with him. He's a dynamic, amazing guy with integrity. And that's just how it is. Entrepreneurs aren't the guys who always get it right. They're the ones who are willing to get it wrong. Seriously. And I think that this talks about that at a granular level. It talks about it in an individual relationship level. But I think if we can predicate that at the 10,000 foot view, we would see that there's no way to get to the best us expecting other people to do the things that we think we need them to do to progress for ourselves. If that's the case, they're driving the bus, Leandro. Man, I told you that story about my buddy Todd. We're at a four-way stop and one dude kind of cut in front. He's red-faced and cursing for 2 blocks. And I'm like, this dude, or it was actually a woman, this girl doesn't even know you exist. Yet she has impacted your whole being and now mine. And I looked at him and listen, I hope this isn't too racy, but this is exactly what I said. I go, you're her bitch. I mean, hey, you are. She got you, man. She owns you, at least for 2 blocks. If I wasn't here, she might have owned you for the next 2 days. I told him, I said, you need to pray to whoever you pray to, that I'm here with you to help you, not let her take you like this. But I am going to tell you, I've been the biatch before, and maybe even recently, maybe. But like, what'd you hear? All right, any errors, omissions, cares, concerns, anything? I feel like, man, this is like a lecture series. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I like it, bro.
So let's ask for their feedback. If they've read the chapter, what's their take?
Well, perhaps they haven't.
Yes.
And that's another thing. That's what kind of made this one hard, because I kind of took approach like, wait, if someone hasn't read it, how can I kind of compile some things? But then it got so rich, it's tough, right? Let's keep moving through it though. All right. I've never seen successful people stall out because of some feared, anticipated, or hypothetical outcome. I've never seen successful people stall out because of some feared, anticipated, or hypothetical outcome. And by the way, waiting and not making a move is making a move. So here you got to read it. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like so rich. I can't read it. You know what I mean? But the idea here is that it can't be that attitude. Hey, if I tell you this, will you promise not to be mad? That's a mindset of trying to manage the result of an activity that we know we need to engage in, right? If you know how it is. You made a mistake, you lied to your spouse, something happened, you're like, I know I got to go make this right. Making it right on your or my terms is what puts us in the driver's seat of our bus. Because if I were to say, hey, Stace, if I tell you this, you promise you won't get mad? She goes, nope, can't do that. And I go, all right. And I don't tell her. Well, now I got that rotten tooth, right? I got that negativity in my heart because I know I need to say something. So I guess it's, again, we're getting down to the crux of fear, self-doubt, self-worth, right? And I was recently, I didn't even think to, I don't know why this came to my mind, but recently my son goes to a little private school here, and his Bible teacher, Miss Jones, who's so cool. She is so cool. Older lady, just cool as can be, man. Wears like the cool shirts with the cuffs that are different, like the ones I like to wear, the really nice ones. Anyway, she's cool as can be. And one of the assignments for, he's in 8th grade. So he's going into high school. And she wants us as parents, which we did, Stacy and I, write a letter of who we think he is. And mine was all about the truth of who he is in my eyes as his dad. His mom's, I don't know I didn't read her letter. I didn't read Stacy's letter. I don't know what that was about, but I definitely reflected. And we're people of faith, for those of you who don't know us. And I said, my hope is that he looks to the Bible to understand who he is to his heavenly Father. And I say all that to say, that's not to get too rich spiritually, but it's to say that it really matters that we know the truth of who we are. where whoever that may be. And I know there's people cross, cultures, races, creeds, everything. And it doesn't matter. This is what includes us all, is the need to understand who we are, because the world, certainly social media, it's just full of, and I don't want to get preachy, but I guess I already am. It's full of lies of who we are, right? It's allowing us to compare ourselves to something that's not real. And it's more appropriate now, in my opinion, with all the associations I have, and certainly for my kids, that they have a grounding in somewhere to go to get a clear understanding of who they really are. Because every day we're peppered, right? We're peppered. So I guess I say that to say, that was probably one of the most rewarding activities I have done in a long time. And he just read it. So I did it, a week or two ago, and he just read it like 2 days ago. And he came up and he's like, Dad, I read your letter. And as soon as he did, I was like, oh man, I forgot about that, but that's so cool that we have value in who we are, Leandro. I mean, it's hard to not manage the outcome. It's hard to nerd up. It's hard to chase our dreams, to do success walks and talk out loud to ourselves and the public. And, there's just so many things that are not easy, especially if we don't have an understanding of the truth of who we are. And it's harder to find that, right? You got 99% of the tapestry in life are lies about who we are, whether it be a billboard, a commercial, politics, social media, shows, pornography. Think about that. Little kids watching that going, whoa, what the heck? So anyway.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, you may. Thank you for shutting me up for a minute.
No, I just think this is so rich. And what I would suggest, that I don't know what you think, if we could go through it today, because you're lecturing if somebody have not read it, and then maybe next time or at the end or next time we could think and see how are we applying this in our life.
Ooh, perfect. Let's do that,
Okay.
Leandra. And it could be this chapter, and it could be, because this is about the middle of the book, Beatrice. So I think that's a wonderful, it could be anything that we've done up to, like how did that make a difference? I love that idea. Does that sound good?
Because where I am right now, taking care of my 93-year-old mother, this is just God sent. You just do not know.
Oh, I bet with all the struggles that must present. Wow, that's so awesome. Hey, God is good all the time.
Yes, he is.
Thank you, Beatrice. All right, so let's keep moving. Man, now I like that. See, now I feel better about it, because we can have next week to kind of touch on it again. Because to Beatrice's point, like I said at the beginning, there's so much in this chapter. Look, we're already half-hour in. Oh my gosh. Leandro, I got to tighten up, man. All right. The next thing he's kind of talking about is, and I want to read this. The problem comes when the dependency. So he's talking about don't be dependent. And he's not saying don't act like we don't need people to get where we need to go. So we got to draw that line right now. That's not where we're going with this. Hey, I can do it all by myself. That's a planned failure. Literally, you need other people to get where you need to go. And then we know that we need to help them get where they want to go so that we can get where we want to go.
Yep.
Right. That's the truth, and as we know it. But I do want to read this part. People who are overly dependent or approach life with an attitude of dependence tend to be less successful than their counterpart. This does not mean that to depend on others is a bad thing, for that is of itself a measure of emotional health, right? Having other people help us. We need to be able to depend on people because we all need each other. The problem comes when the dependency is passive and we look to others to do what we should be doing for ourselves. To put it simply, I should not depend on another person to do my job. And I wrote this down, I should not depend on another person to be productive. I should not depend on another person to be happy. I should not depend on another person to not be in fear. I should not depend on another person to be at peace in my life. I should not depend on another person to love them. Man, you start driving your own bus on emotions like that and being less dependent on the reaction or the outer circumstance, certainly not ignoring it, Leandro. I'm not saying that. To do that would be thoughtless. At the very least, tone deaf, if that makes sense. Focus. I wrote down here, okay, hold on. Okay, so the next thing he mentions a person that it was a deja vu experience, and the situation, he said that he had to the guy said, how are things going? And he goes, well, there are some situations I have to face into. And he liked that. He goes, faced into, like, there's some tough situations that I need to deal with. And I wrote, embrace the suck. Same thing. You got to embrace the suck. Whatever. I mean, shoot, it's like, just face, his way of saying it is face into it. Face into. I got to face into some problems.
I really liked the way he said that.
Yeah, right. Again, I just love the way he articulates things.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Super cool. Okay, so here I wrote face into. Now, that is an interesting phrase, I thought. That is not a figure of speech. That is how he does life. He faces into it. It is active, not passive, going toward life, not away from it. He leans toward it and propels himself into it. So I wrote in here, it is good for us. Remember last week I said, if we can just change, if we know that struggle, if we know that the uncomfortable, if we know that the hard to get through, if we know that the heartbreak, the sadness, the joy, the peace, all of it is good if we define good as those things that help us become a better us. So yes, it may not be pleasant, but let's redefine as a group good for us. Is it good for me to get a ticket and because I'm driving too fast? That's not pleasant, but maybe it causes me to slow down, right? I mean, honestly, it seems like I just came to my mind. It seems like a horribly simple example, but I think it's appropriate. I've never seen a successful person that I've already read that. Oh my gosh, now I'm getting it. Okay, oh, here we go. And by the way, waiting, and I read this before, waiting and not making a move is making a move. If you are strategically waiting with good reason, deja vu, then that's okay. Deja vu people wait as well as act, not because of passivity or fear, but because they have a purpose. So when you have to wait, so I'm not saying, I love that he brings this in. It's not like, hey, just go run your face in the wall just to say you did something. Sometimes we do have to wait. And I wrote the law of process and the law of timing. We've gone over those. We need them both. We live in a microwave world. Our growth and development doesn't happen like that. If you can't grow and develop on TikTok, not 30 seconds at a time. It takes time. It takes time. All right, I can blame them what they do to me, but I cannot blame them for what I do with what they do to me. I can blame them for what they do to me, but I cannot blame them for what I do with what they do to me. It reminds me that I was in a meeting once. I've told this story before. I know I have. I don't need to, hey, you told this story before. Not that anybody does that, but that was funny to me. I was in a meeting one time and some guy stood up in the back, or some guy stood up and he was complaining about his wife, Leandro, which I cannot stand. I mean, you're going to blame your wife, at least complain to her. So he's complaining about his wife and he's like, my wife's always doing this. She's pushing my buttons. She does this and she's constantly pushing I swear she wants to push my buttons. And some guy stands up in the back and goes, you need better button covers. And I thought, man, how perfect. And I ended up meeting that guy after. He was great because that's it. We have to take responsibility. I mean, honestly, and I've said this before, and I know it boils us down to such a granular level. Sometimes it might be hard to get to embrace. But if I were to cuss you out in Mandarin or Cantonese, okay, right? But I did it like this. Yes. You'd be like, all right. Right? That's cool. Right. You don't understand what I'm saying. If I'm speaking in Cantonese or Mandarin, you're just putting a definition on it based on my expression. So if I do Mandarin and I'm like, hey, you're like, all right. But if I do it like, hey, I don't like you, you're ugly, and I'm doing it like this in Mandarin, you'd be like, okay. The point is, we assign value and definition to the sounds that our ears hear. If I say something outside of the language that you understand, you are left to other senses and other ways of identifying how you're going to define that. What I'm saying is, we need better button covers. We need to redefine what we hear instead of, and it comes again to that self-worth, that value, that self-esteem, to where when someone says something to me, like, hey, Matthew, you're a failure. I know, like, nobody, I don't care how close you are to me. If you told that to me, I'd be like, no, yeah, I'm not. I have a button. I have a cover over that button. I have a cover. Someone were to tell me that I'm not a good husband. I'd be like, okay, I don't know what to tell you. In other words, I have control over how I receive what people say to me. And I think in this environment, what a great message that you don't have to, if somebody insults me and I don't even know them, they don't know me, they're not in my life. Let's say I do know them. I went to college with them, hadn't seen them in 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, 2 years, 1 year, 6 weeks. They don't know me. Wow. And listen, I understand that this is easier said than done. It's just one of the things it's easy for me. Why would I care what that person thinks of me, Leandro? Now, Stacy comes up to me and says, hey, man, I feel like you got an integrity issue. I'd be like, oh, whoa. Why? Like, tell me. But if somebody sees a post or says something about my faith and they just happen to be, what? I don't respond to that, you all. I'm not even kidding you. It doesn't even faze me a bit. There's so many people that get so offended, worked up, and I'm not trying to be superior about it. I'm really not. It hurts my feeling and it confuses me because it just seems so obvious how unwise it is to me. It seems so obvious how non-productive it is. You're not going to control other people. And we read that book, certainly not by criticizing them and telling them they're wrong. We read the book. As soon as you say somebody's wrong, they shut down. So then if we know that, then what is our true objective of telling somebody they're wrong other than ego? Remember my acronym, ego, edging God out. And it could be any God, you guys. It doesn't matter. The point is we're putting our own self in front. And at the very least, we need to, if we call ourselves leaders, we need to at the very least be servant leaders and not be in front. Heck, I would go to Nicaragua and I go to any new class. Hey, define leadership. There's going to be people saying somebody out front, somebody making all the decisions. And it's like, no, that's not what leadership is at all. I mean, how many people? Oh boy, I get into it, man. I got to stop. I got to rein in my ADD. All right. Listen, so the next couple, the button cover thing is about having responsibility, about fault. It doesn't matter fault. It doesn't matter fault. Fault means nothing to our development. The responsibility of the circumstances is what we need to focus on. Like I love what he says. It's just like you can sit there and say, hey, it's God's fault that it's raining on me. I'm going to stand here till he stops it. Or you can use it, like move, make a reaction. And it's my contention that when it does rain and you do have to think and you do have to react and you do have to be a problem solver, that it betters us. To next time it rains, we're like, hey, now I know God's not going to stop it. I got it. It's like we're better. Yes. It just seems obvious to me. So, and again, I don't mean to be condescending at all. I just love this chapter a lot and I get all worked up. Like, Jojo, the circus boy. That's from Tommy Boy, the movie. If you guys haven't seen it, you remember that when he's in the diner? Have you ever seen Tommy Boy? No. Leandro, run, don't walk. Okay. Anybody seen Tommy Boy? Dana, have you ever seen Tommy Boy? No. You know what that's called in our house?
I thought you were talking. At first, I thought you were talking about the musical Tommy. Do you remember that with Peter Frampton? But then I'm like, no, wait, absolutely. That's not what he's talking about.
The pinball wizard.
So I don't think I have. But I guess I need to, huh?
Well, I think yes. It's an older movie, but it's with Chris Farley and David Spade.
Oh, I love that. I like them a lot.
Oh man, they had such great chemistry. And anyway, we call this like if you've ever done that where like, hey, did y'all see this movie? And everybody's like, no, holding the bag. That in our household, that's what I because you can't go on with the story, right? So you got to hang on to the bag. Victor's trying to get in. Okay. Man, there's a lot here. A lot. Golly. I love for those of you going to read it, page 104, there's an example of a drunk driver and an addict. And I just think I'm not going to go into it now, but I think he just does such a fantastic job. I will read this because I have it quoted. It's Gretchen and her sister. Some would get angry. Let's see. When placed in Gretchen's situation, people who own their lives would take control of their feelings and have a different experience than hers. How they respond is totally up to them. Some would get, this is where I quoted, some would get angry and yell at Gene. Others would go out and get the rest of the family to join them against Gene, seeking revenge and causing dissension. Some would not be too affected by the experience and would feel pity for Jean, or because of her petty, limiting attitude. Others would get on the phone and call Jean. They would seek to understand the roots of the breach and try to communicate a desire to reconcile and forgive. Others would desire to be loving and mature, find themselves unable to be angry, unable to be anything but it. Let me read that again. Others would desire to be loving and mature, but find themselves unable to be anything but angry. Yet those who would choose to get help with their angry feelings so they could acquire the strength to choose better reactions than anger. On and on, we could go with endless possibilities of the both good and bad ways of handling the problem. And what he's talking about here is sometimes, you know, he's talking about addicts and even just, you know, being able to let go of resentment and bitterness. Sometimes we don't really have the tools to do that. And we need help to do that. And that again goes to self-worth, right, Leandro? I remember when I had a great friend of mine, Smitty, and we were in restaurant Rio Bravo. This is back in 1991, 92. And Smitty was not a great server. And the reason is because he was always asking people to do things for him. So you always thought he was kind of crummy. And then one night I finally got pissed because he was getting the greatest section, you know, and I look at Bob, who's one of our managers. I go, Bob, Smitty's one of the, you know, he's my buddy. And I would say it if he was here, but he's not a great server. And he goes, why do you say that? He goes, because he's always asking people to do things for him. And he goes, that's why he's a great server. Big learning moment. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And anyone who feels that it is has a very, very serious, and we all have in some way or another. So I'm talking about me too. Anyone who has felt this has a serious self-worth issue. If they think, like I was talking to my banker today and I made an error in my deposit slip. And I said, typically I have staff do this. Like most people think that if I have a deficiency, I need to learn it up and train it up. I don't, I just hire it. If I got something I don't know how to do, I'm not gifted at naturally, I hire it. I don't need to be good at everything. You know what I mean? I just want to be good at the stuff I'm good at. They get help. Responsibility and ownership means that we have to take control, even of being out of control. No blame, no victims, unable, but no blame, no victims, unable, but responsible for their inability. Winners take the cards that they are dealt and play them well. So it's not about being perfect. It's not about always getting it right. It's just about taking responsibility. And the mistakes that we made, like the intranet, you know, friendly, like the workout, like the couple of ventures we've done, right, Leandro? Those aren't bad for us. That they're unpleasant. Nobody likes to lose tens of thousands of dollars, but if that's what we need to get where we need to go, then bring it on. Why not? Take responsibility for it. Don't think, oh, look, I am. Oh, I'm a crummy business person. I was with my chiropractor today, and she said hydration, nutrition, alignment, positive attitude for good health. Positive attitude has such a great difference in our health. And if we see the things that happen in our lives, good, bad, or indifferent, by the worldly measuring stick, if we redefine good as anything that helps us become better, then we're going to see pain as good, as long as we take responsibility for it and we own it and we use it. That's the missing part. Not all things are equal. It's like, you know, there's a book in a book that says it uses all things for the good of the kingdom for those who believe it are called to his purpose. Right? It's like there's a qualifying thing there. And that's the qualifying thing here, is seeing circumstances as holistic for being good. We'll leave it at that. All right. The gift of freedom. Please read this, page 105. No man is free who is not master of himself. No man is free or woman is free if we are not masters of ourselves. So if you're a victim, you're not free, are you? How can you be?
No.
But he's causing me to do this. You're not free. You're in prison. You're caused. You know, you were bound. You were contained to do something. That's not free.
Being a victim.
Being a victim, yeah, you can't. Free, and I love it. Relationships, finances, morality, spirituality, feelings, choices, attitudes, emotional reactions, career, stress, freedom of addictions, guilt. But there is no freedom apart from responsibility and ownership. There is no freedom apart from responsibility and ownership. On 107, a ton of practical things. I love self-development books, but a lot of times, hey, be a big dreamer. How? Right? Give me steps. Give me some guidance. Don't, right? Be happy. But I'm not. Like, if it was that easy, I would be already. Like, I don't want to be unhappy. But I'm telling you, there are some amazing practical results. I mean, practical things and tools in here. I mean, I'll just read a few of them. Ask if there's any of my attitudes or actions that have contributed to this problem. He's talking about when you have a problem with somebody. He's talking about Gretchen, right? Deal with my hurt and anger so my communication is more likely to help things rather than hurt. I mean, just stop. If we just, it's that old thing. If you got something, nasty to send somebody, write it down, put it in an envelope or put an email, leave it in draft for 24 hours, and then go back and read it and see if you send it. My grandfather taught me that. I never sent the letter. I haven't done it 30 times, but I've done it 6. Never sent the letter. I haven't done it in 15 years because on the 6th one, I was like, okay, I get it. Don't send this stuff because you're not going to want to, right? Some of the things I starred, get feedback from others on ways that I need to change and find out how to do it. That's hard, right? Talk about having some self-worth. Hey, Leandro, why don't you tell me what's wrong with me? What can I improve? But we've done that, right? And hey, good, bad, or indifferent. How do you like your job? How do you remember? We asked you that. Good, anywhere. You tell us because we want to grow. We want to learn. So I'm just going to read off the starred ones. We're 10 minutes away. You guys hang in there. Take responsibility inside yourself for your reactions in the way that you allow them to get you. That's that button cover. Take responsibility for our reactions. If you listen, I know this is probably going to offend somebody, but you know what? I'm not going to do it because the last time I did that, it did come back to get me. All right, next star, choose different and better reactions than the way you've responded previously. See, these are practical. This is practical stuff. Manage your expectations. You know why? Expectation, reality. You know what this is? Disappointment. So if we can manage our expectations to proper reality, right? Be pragmatic in the way we assess things. Take ownership, like, oh, I know when I tell them how offended I was, they're going to apologize, and manage your expectations. The expectations are only that we feel good about our own activity. I told you, if we start putting our emotions on our activities, unless we can put our analysis on the results, right? Results will give us some direction, but results should not have an impact on our emotions. It's okay if it does, like, I'm disappointed I didn't get the result I wanted. Remember, I told you, I don't think ignoring emotions, including anger, including sadness, I think ignoring them is wrong. I think a lot of times those emotions are a clue on where we need to go. Like an example would be if every time I read about human trafficking, I am just appalled, I'm angered on this. It's like, well, maybe that's a sign that I need to get involved and make a difference in that area and in that arena. And that will fulfill me and cause me to be a better me, cause me to be who I think I'm supposed to be, right?
It's your passion.
Yeah, manage your expectations. Love them instead of expecting things from them. Woo! I could drop the book right there, but I'm not going to do it. Love them instead of expecting things from them. If you think that's corny, I would, start reading some books and get around some good, loving people, because that's not corny. That's the key to life right there. That's what gives you the freedom. Because now if I love you, I know you don't pay me back. I know you show up late, whatever the thing is, I know, you should probably brush your teeth more. And I'm first of all, Leandro is one of the most dapper men I've ever met. So that hyperbole ought to make it doesn't matter. It's like find a way to love people. And it goes back to that kind of that dog, right? Tearing up the house, right? It's like, oh, I'm more concerned about why he's doing that than I am the destruction and the pain and whatever he's doing. Stop enabling the problem. Do not depend on them for things they cannot give, such as approval, validation, and love. That makes me think of the 80-20 rule. 80-20 rule. This is a good one. People, a lot of times, they set up their spouse or dear friend or dear family member for failure, wanting them to fulfill them 100%. I need all my validation from my spouse. I need all my fulfillment from my spouse. The reality is a spouse can only give you at best 80% of what we need. And that's a good husband and a good wife. The other 20% has got to be found, for me, it's in my spirituality. right? So there's 20% for everybody somewhere outside of somebody. Does that make sense? Even our life partner. But let me ask you a question. How many people leave the 80% and search for the 20? 51% is what I hear. And that's in the church too. So it's not even, the statistic doesn't improve at all in the church, which is, sadly, especially when I've been married, I'm gonna go ahead and brag. I've been married for 22 years, going on 23 this month, but I courted Stacy for 5. Yeah, so we've been together for 28 years and I'm 49. So I've been with her more years than I've not been with her. Man, you talk about a lucky dude. Y'all know Stacy, man. I married way up. I got lucky. Of course, I made my own luck, right? When I saw her, I knew it, Leandro. All right. What can I do to make this better? Hey, listen, we actually are probably going to, because the rest of it's kind of the same thing. Let's see. On page 112, if you're reading this, he has a beautiful story about about setting a goal. And so he's talking about one of his deja vu friends, and he says the heat was on him to be active, pressure imposed by no one other than himself. Like he didn't need somebody, he didn't depend on someone to motivate him. He found it within himself by setting goals. That's one reason why goals are so important, because it causes us to be less dependent on people to motivate us and move us. I mean, being, ahead of a deadline, all those things are about goals, right? But all right, so we truly serve. Let's see. I bracketed this, so it's going to be kind of abstract, admittedly so. Dig up your dream. Dig up your dream. But then ask yourself, what do I need to do now? How can I improve my lot? What do I need to do to get where I want to be? What skills do I need to develop? What fears do I need to get past? Whom do I need to meet? How can I invest my talent? These questions address steps towards a proactive initiative, meaning we are taking control. We are driving our bus. We don't need an external circumstance we don't depend on an external circumstance and or person to get our dream and our bus going where we want it to go. If we can start taking dominion and responsibility and ownership over everything in our lives, including how we respond to things, because then, like the story that I told you of going to see my, I guess it's my uncle's second removed cousin, it was my dad's cousin. And we walked into the church a little late to Jimmy standing up behind the podium, eulogizing his 9-year-old daughter. And his prayer and his eulogy was so moving because of the sincerity of it. And the prayer was a prayer of thanks for the 9 years he had. He wasn't, I mean, I know he was sad. And I'm not going to say that, but he wasn't bitter. He wasn't, he really was. And I saw him recently at my dad's funeral, and he really was and is the guy that sees things from that angle. And instead of feeling like he was a victim of, being robbed of years that he felt he should have had or was entitled, he didn't think like that. In fact, I told last week, it's like, I see it like a little kid, like, thank you for the greatest thing I've ever had in my life. But you know what? I should have gotten more. Like, it seems selfish if you look at it that way. Now, I say that as being very close and witnessing someone losing a child. I haven't. So I'm not saying I'm there, right? But that's the right response. That's the right response, because he's not a victim, and he is a successful man, and he's a beautiful man, and he wouldn't be if he was bitter. He wouldn't be the Jimmy that I know if he carried that resentment, if he felt like a victim. He took responsibility, he took dominion and control of the circumstance, and he used it to become a better Jimmy, because he is a pastor. So with that, that thought process, it's easier. So for those of you who don't have that thought process, I wish I could train you better. I have it. So I don't know any other way. It's like, I'm an only child. They're like, hey, what's it like being an only child? I was like, I don't know. What do you mean? All right. I think that's it. Any comments, errors, omissions, additions, cares, concerns?
No, they all are enjoying this process, and they're agreeing with what Beatrice.
Oh, I think it was a fantastic idea. Thank you. Yes. So yes, Beatrice, fantastic idea. We will get together, and it could be any place in the book, anything you've read, even if you're ahead and it's, made a difference. Let's share that, because it's that results leadership, right? The production leader. When you have real results, they resonate more than flowery speech. Does that make sense? Right. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your heart, Dana Boyd, and Thank you, Miss Beatrice. Urvashi. Bye, hon. Bye, everybody. Have a great day. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for today's session. It was really great. I wanted to say.
Awesome. Let's keep getting better, you guys, every day, right, Leandro? Oh man, I'm fired up now.
It's mindset.
I want to make it a point to I really like today's session on faith and responsibility, response, and expectations and faith. Yeah, really.
Oh my
great.
gosh, she's training the next one, man. Bye, you guys. Thank you.